What's going on, guys? Mango here, and today I'm bringing you the Overwatch 2 beta guide. I was lucky enough to get into the beta the first time around and want to share my tips, tricks, and strategies for new or returning players to Overwatch. I'll start by going over the changes from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, how they affect gameplay, and ways you can take advantage of these changes. From there, I will move on to some general tips for Overwatch 2, then finish up by going over a hero tier list for all three roles. With that out of the way, let's get started. The biggest change they made to Overwatch 2 is that they removed one tank slot, turning the game from 6-on-6 to 5-on-5. I personally am a fan of the change because it takes some of the chaos and randomness out of the game and makes you feel like you have more of an individual impact on the outcome of the game. But how does this affect gameplay? Depending on what skill level you play at, this could impact your gameplay in a few ways. For players that are used to higher levels of teamwork and coordination, that means that generally you will be missing an off tank that can peel for your backline characters. As a reminder, peeling means turning around and protecting your vulnerable backline teammates like Zenyatta or Baptiste when they get dove on by flankers like Tracer or Winston. You can look at this two ways. Offensively, you can use the lack of a second tank player to your advantage by flanking the enemy backline when they are isolated or vulnerable, since there will be less resources for the enemy team to thwart your attack. Defensively, you need to be even more aware of when your backline is under fire and quicker to respond in order to keep your team alive. This responsibility will fall to the less mobile DPS heroes like McCree or Torbjorn, since they should usually be positioned closest to the backline. In lower skill ranks, the trap to avoid in this new 5v5 gameplay is shooting the sole enemy tank when they are being pocketed by one or both healers. Tanks are even beefier in Overwatch 2, and oftentimes you can't do enough damage to overcome their healing and defensive abilities. For example, trying to burst down an Orisa with an Ana and a Mercy pocket isn't going to do anything besides charge the Ana and Mercy's ults, especially when Orisa pops Fortify. You're better off trying to eliminate a damage or support hero. This is an interesting point because in Overwatch 1, damage dealt was the most important medal to have as an offensive hero, as you could do one damage and still get an elimination, but damage dealt showed that you were actually putting in work. In Overwatch 2, having the highest damage can be a red herring for effective gameplay, as you can pump out endless damage into the sole enemy tank without having much of an impact besides charging enemy support ults. Eliminations is now the most important metric to have, because confirming kills is the name of the game. I know some people won't like this, but Overwatch 2 is definitely more deathmatchy, and to that end, being able to confirm kills is highly important. Okay, the next change to Overwatch 2 is class passives. Tanks, DPS, and supports all got a class passive ability which makes them slightly stronger. Tanks are now more resistant to crowd control abilities like Lucio's Boop. DPS now moves slightly quicker, and supports start to regen health after not taking damage for a couple seconds. The least impactful of these passive abilities is faster DPS. While it may sound good on paper, I really did not notice a difference at all during my gameplay except for Soldier, who was able to reposition quicker, which they have already nerfed. This passive role ability won't affect your gameplay much at all. The tank passive ability is somewhat helpful. Reinhardt already had a CC reduction in Overwatch 1, and that is now applied to every tank character in Overwatch 2. This means it will be harder to get environmental kills on tanks or to move them out of position, but this also doesn't feel like a huge change in Overwatch 2, as I only noticed it once or twice in the hundreds of Overwatch 2 games that I played. Now, supports being able to regen health is a huge game changer. That means Ana doesn't have to use anti-nade, one of the most powerful abilities in the game, to heal herself. It means you don't have to be reliant on the second support character to heal you, and it is by far the most impactful passive ability in the game. I'll talk about this more in the tier list sections, but having health regen is a huge boost to several support characters. As I previously mentioned, Ana can save her Bioya grenade for more impactful plays, Baptiste can save his healing burst for his teammates, Moira can fade away from damage, and by the time she's out, she is already regenning health. It was so powerful with Lucio's healing aura that he was nearly impossible to kill, so they nerfed his self-healing already. This is the most noticeable change and gives supports the survivability they needed in a game with one less tank. Let's move on to the next change, which is the ping system. You are now able to ping enemies and locations on the map, similar to Apex Legends, for your team to see. If you ping an enemy, it will show an icon where you pinged them, and pinging the map will give you communication options like watching here or attacking here. I like the idea of pings, but they haven't been super useful in the games I played. I think the most common and helpful use of pings for the majority of players is when someone, usually your support player, pings a flanking enemy, such as a Reaper who teleported to your backline. These types of pings will be especially important for solo queuers and will be a sign that you need to be aware of a flanker. I can also see some niche uses of an invisible Sombra or a sniper with a sightline pinging enemies for the team to see, but it's hard to quickly identify hero portraits on these pings, and with so much happening so quickly in this game, it can be hard to act on them. I think the ping system is something that will continue to mature as Overwatch 2 is played out by higher level players, but currently doesn't affect the game too much. Okay, let's do a quick 1-minute guide on the new hero, Sojourn. I'm going to assume you know a little bit about her already. Her playstyle is similar to Soldier 76, with moderate mobility and hit scan and projectile attack options. What I want to point out is the nice combo she has for taking out squishy characters. I found that comboing your Disruptor Shot, Primary Fire, and Railgun can quickly and consistently take out 200 HP heroes. Let me elaborate. Start by shooting your Disruptor Shot at an enemy hero. This works especially well at corners they are playing behind or choke points, then follow up with your Primary Fire. If aimed properly, this should get your enemy down to slightly under half health with about 40 to 50 charge on your Railgun. At this point, your Railgun shot should be able to confirm the kill. And it's as easy as that. You can use your slide jump to get a better angle for the Disruptor Shot or to close the distance on an escaping enemy for a kill shot. The important thing to remember is the order of Disruptor Shot, Primary Fire, then Railgun. As a side note, the Railgun is a one-shot headshot on 200 HP enemies at around 80 charge. Okay, last of all the Overwatch 2 changes, push mode. I'll be honest, I don't have too many tips for this game mode as I think it's still being figured out even at the highest levels. I'm not going to go over the rules of this game mode since I have limited time, but I will say this. Use the robot as cover. Simple as that. Additionally, completions where a team pushes the barrier all the way to the end are rare. Knowing this, you should instead play to get your barrier further than the other team, but then quickly disengage to play defense if you have that lead and find yourself at a man disadvantage. Trying to stall out the objective when you've pushed the payload into the enemy side of the map isn't productive because the enemy spawns will be closer and they will start to overwhelm you. Instead, if you're able to regroup with your respawning allies quickly, you can take a fight in the middle of the map, and even if you lose, you may still be able to regroup and take another fight before the enemy team can push their barrier farther than yours. Let me illustrate this with a quick example. Let's say we're playing on the new map Coliseum. Each team has pushed the barrier under the bridge of the opposing team's side. Your team starts dying after pushing the robot 10 meters farther than the enemy team, so you and your remaining allies retreat to regroup with your respawning teammates. Since you regrouped quickly and decisively, you're able to meet the enemy team in the Coliseum and stall the robot. Now, even if you lose this fight, you can quickly regroup and get an opportunity to contest the robot before it pushes the barrier farther than your team, since it is now on your side of the map and closer to your spawn. Since you gave up the first fight quickly, it afforded you 2 opportunities to win full team fights and turn the robot around before losing the lead, as opposed to stalling out the robot and dying on the objective in the first fight, which would lead you only getting 1 full team fight before the enemy team pushes the barrier farther than your team. One more final change for Overwatch 2 that I didn't talk about in the intro. 2CP has been removed. Kiss Hanamura, Temple of Anubis, and Volskaya goodbye. This makes the game more fun. I will not be elaborating. Okay, let's get to the final part of this video, the tier lists. Honestly, Overwatch 2 is balanced really well, with no hero feeling completely OP or irrelevant. I'm going to dive right in and start with the tank tier list. Hold the phone, since making this video, Blizzard has announced Junkerqueen. Junkerqueen looks to be a shieldless, close-range brawler with the ability to support nearby allies. No one has played her yet and her power level is yet to be determined, but to me, her playstyle seems to be a mix between Roadhog and Zarya in that she's shieldless and offense-oriented, but still has the ability to directly support her teammates. I think she'll solidly be between the A and B tier where I have Roadhog and Zarya, although I don't think she would hold up very well going up against a Reinhardt. We'll have to see once the next beta drops, but one thing I can guarantee is she looks like a ton of fun, and you're sure to encounter her frequently in your games. I'll start by saying all tanks feel super playable and strong, but in a world with less shields, Reinhardt and Winston stand out. Reinhardt feels like a pub stomper with his 1200 HP shield, loads of armor, and strong offensive abilities, not to mention his reworked charge ability, which now lets him make tighter turns and stop on a dime. Rein should be a go-to for all returning Overwatch players. You just don't have to think too hard to get value out of this hero. Winston's 800 HP shield feels a bit oppressive, and I'm anticipating nerfs for it. The fact they added a long-range poke attack to Winston is just the cherry on top. Not gonna lie, I loved playing Roadhog, especially with less shield and defensive abilities in play. I think his carry potential is way higher in Overwatch 2, especially in the mid and low tiers where there's less team coordination. In the B tier, Zarya can be very powerful when pushing through chokes like King's Point A, and if you build up charge efficiently, can totally roll team fights. Sigma's shield feels powerful, but he needs to stick to maps where he can utilize his range, like the new Monte Carlo map. He can be overrun easily in maps with shorter engagement distances like Midtown. Then, we have the two reworked characters, Doomfist and Orisa. I think Doomfist has broader applications and is more skill dependent, while Orisa has the potential to be an absolute pub stomper in lower ranks. These two could move up or down based on individual skill, or as a community figures out how to maximize their value. Then we have Wrecking Ball. Honestly, Wrecking Ball could be great since there is less CC in the game. I just saw him very rarely in games of my own. I would say he's a wild card with the potential to take over games in the right hands. Finally, we have D.Va, who just doesn't feel like she does enough to compete with the other tanks. Winston, Doomfist, and Sigma can all do what D.Va does, but better. Okay, let's move on to DPS. I won't be able to touch on each hero individually due to time constraints, but I'll make some important callouts. The driving factor in my rankings is the fact support heroes can now regen health due to their passive ability, so I prioritize characters that can quickly and efficiently eliminate supports on their own. The S tier belongs to Reaper and Widowmaker. Reaper functions as a self-sufficient flanker who can single-handedly take out one or two backline characters while also doubling as a self-healing frontline off tank. Widow being able to eliminate a support character with a single shot, completely ignoring their health regen, is huge as well. Soldier and Cassidy are strong overall characters, Soldier being able to quickly take off angles and burst down squishies or provide consistent DPS to tanks, while Cassidy has strong damage with his revised flashbang ability that shouldn't be slept on for eliminating squishy, mobile enemies. I've had the most problems with Genjis, especially with the lack of CC in Overwatch 2, but he is an especially skill-dependent character. Tracer can take advantage of vulnerable backlines, but does less damage than you're used to and needs help from another flanker like Winston, Doomfist, or Genji to really shine. The B tier is occupied by heroes that can do a lot of things pretty well. Mei and Bastion are safe picks, while Torb can be effective at shutting down flank angles on maps like Toronto. Ashe can be very powerful with the Mercy Pocket, but impotent without it. Pharah and Echo are able to get more damage in with one less shield on the field, but are more likely to run into enemy hitscan players, which are more prevalent in Overwatch 2. Sombra is another skill-dependent character, capable of pulling a team to victory or single-handedly throwing with ineffectual flank play. The C tier is reserved for heroes that thrived against shield comps. Hanzo, Symmetra, and Junkrat. Hanzo is still a high damage character who is capable of one-shotting enemy squishies, and Symmetra still serves a purpose on maps like Lijiang Tower Night Market where you can get maximum value out of her teleporter and turrets. Junkrat struggles to find a foothold in Overwatch 2 and is one of the only characters besides Bastion and Hanzo who is capable of focusing down enemy tanks single-handedly. I only found him useful against beefy, shieldless, slow-moving tanks like Orisa and Roadhog, or on maps where you can spam choke points like Lijiang Tower Control Center. Okay, let's bring it home with support characters. Ana and Moira feel like the strongest heroes by far due to how they are enabled with the new support passive. Ana feels like an all-around all-star with automatic health regen, strong healing, more impactful anti-nades since she no longer has to worry about healing herself, and more damage in general as having one less tank to heal frees her up to be more offensive with her biotic rifle. I cannot recommend her enough. Moira also feels super powerful since she can quickly fade to get away from any imminent threat, and she will start healing as soon as she comes out of fade with the new support passive. Her primary fire is also great against Genjis who are feeling emboldened with the lack of CC in Overwatch 2. The A and B tiers are pretty close in my mind and could be mixed around very easily. Lucio thrives in this new deathmatchy style of Overwatch, and Zenyatta's new kick ability feels far more powerful and fun than it should. Being able to pocket a tank or DPS's Mercy feels even more impactful now, but that is dependent on having a good tank or DPS to pocket. Baptiste falls down a tier because his strength was healing grouped up allies, and with one less tank, there is less opportunities for his AoE healing grenades to have maximum impact. Brig also feels a little out of place, although her strength lies in how much coordination your team has, as her newfound shield bash mobility makes her a helpful piece in a dive comp, while skill shots are required for her to peel for her backline comrades. Alright, that does it for the Overwatch 2 beta guide. There are sure to be lots of changes to Overwatch 2 over the next several months, so forgive me if any of this info is outdated by the time you see it. If you've been able to get into the beta, let me know what you think of all these new changes, or if you think I missed any tips. If you haven't been able to get into the beta, let me know what questions you have, or what you're most excited for. Or, if you like the video, drop a comment for the algorithm gods because it helps me out a ton as a small content creator. That does it for me. This has been Mango for the Mango Slice. Good luck and have fun.
So long, cowboy. The Moira, that's really low.
She's probably healed by now.
See, the play would have probably been to stop pushing the robot around this corner. They couldn't even like contest it. But
that's a good point. Oh, there's Mercy here. F***ing A. Wow.
let's go.
What a f***ing game, dude. I gotta make a video out of that one.